Welcome to the InPowered Life podcast,
a space dedicated to spreading the message that you have the power within to create everything you seek.
So if you're ready to enroll in a new kind of higher learning, the kind that leads to true personal freedom, hang here with us.
We're your hosts, Rudi and Anniston, and this is InPowered Life. Welcome to the InPowered Life podcast. My name is Rudi Riekstins. We're joined by Anniston Riekstins. And we just want to start by saying thank you so much for joining us and spending some time learning a little bit more about how you can live the most empowered life possible.
So the topic of today's episode was actually inspired by Instagram. Not Instagram directly, but I was on Instagram not too long ago. And I was scrolling and I came across a post or a reel by Brené Brown, who I love. If you're not familiar with Brené Brown, she's written some incredible books, Daring Greatly, and she's just a huge role model for me. Brené was talking about this idea about belonging, and that everyone at our core, one of our core needs is the feeling of belonging to someone or something, a feeling that we are accepted and that we have a place in this world around people who accept us. And in all of her research and speaking to thousands and thousands of people and everything that they did, what she discovered is that the opposite of belonging is fitting in. And that in essence, to belong, to truly belong, you have to be being your authentic self. And that when you alternatively are in a space in your life or in a place in your life where you are fitting in, that you're not being authentic. Thus, you could never truly belong, and nor will any amount of time or effort give you that feeling.
For anybody who follows me, knows that I speak a tremendous amount about energy. And I talk a lot about how the entire world is comprised of atoms, these vibrational frequencies that make up literally everything. You, me, the floor, the walls, everything is made up of exactly the same thing, moving particles of energy. And when you measure energy frequencies, which we can measure today with the latest technology, they are able to actually measure emotional scales. And that when somebody is feeling an emotion, they can measure that frequency of that emotion. And so the lowest vibrational frequency of emotion on the planet is guilt and shame. And so if you are feeling shameful, lowest frequency, above that would be guilt. Well, what did you do? I wish I could take that back. That feeling of guilt. And then it starts to move all the way up. When I speak on these topics in front of audiences, I love to ask the audience, what do you believe the highest vibrational frequency is on the planet? And everyone shouts out, love, it's got to be love. And then every now and again, I'll get joy, love, or it's joy. Love is very high up on the frequency scale, but it's about fourth or fifth from the rung. And above love would be joy. And above the joy is, in fact, at the top is enlightenment. But there's one frequency that is significantly more powerful than all of those frequencies. In fact, enlightenment being all the way at the top, second from the top, but all the way at the top of the scale, the number one spot is overtaken 700 times more powerful, and that is authenticity. The vibrational frequency of authenticity is 700 times more powerful than all the other vibrational frequencies. And it's because when we are our authentic self, we become our most empowered self. I want to touch on all human behavior is driven around wanting to have connection. We all want to connect with somebody. I will share that somebody says, I want a house, I want a car, I want to buy this thing. I want to get a Ferrari, a yacht, a helicopter, whatever the physical thing is they want to do. Start a company, write a book. That is not really what they want. That is the vehicle with which they believe, consciously or unconsciously, is going to support them to connect with someone else. And so if you're writing a book, it's because you want to connect with the world. If you are, wanting a nice car. It's because you want to connect with the cute guy or a cute girl. Like, it's not about the actual physical thing. It's about the end result. It's always tied to you believe it's going to bring you a connection. And if everybody is fighting for connection, everybody really fundamentally within them wants connection. The only way to create connection is when two people share a vulnerable moment. And if you're not vulnerable, you lose the power of authenticity. And if you don't have the authenticity, you lose the connection. And if you don't have the connection because you're not vulnerable, and it creates a cyclical cycle. We see this in business so often where people say there's no emotion in business, take the emotion out. And I do believe that there needs to be, time and a place for specific emotions, but we should be allowed to be authentically who we are at work so we can create connection with the people that are around us, because that will drive us to be happier, that'll drive us to be more fulfilled. And the leaders that lead stoically, they don't have connection. They also don't have trust with their employees. They also don't have this camaraderie. People don't feel safe. They don't feel secure because that one thing that they want is being taken from them in the place where they spend the bulk of their time.
There's this quote that I absolutely love. I cannot remember who said it, but it was that authenticity is the soul made visible. And that when you're being authentic, it is when you are truly being yourself. You are allowing your highest self to express through you. And there is no greater feeling, there is no greater power that you can ever access than when you are truly plugged in and connected and aligned with who you are at your core. And, we're talking about this in terms of, from a really high level and what should be, and it sounds really aspirational, but please know, like, this has been a struggle for both Rudi and I. And I can speak on my behalf and say that it was definitely been my Achilles heel. From a young age, one of my core wounds was rejection and feeling rejected when I was myself. And so that created a pattern of being a chameleon and becoming really, really good at sensing into the energy of people and what they want, and then becoming what they want, and then making sure that they were happy and they were comfortable, and that I wasn't being anything that would challenge their beliefs or disrupt or cause any kind of confrontation. I really, truly embodied that chameleon like person. And that went on for a very long time, even into our marriage, and Rudi would call me forward on it. But to the point where I didn't even realize I was doing it, that you're so good at fitting in, as Brené says, like, you're so good at being able to fit in that you lose touch that you're even fitting in. You think you're belonging. You've actually deluded yourself into thinking, well, I have to do this in order to feel comfortable, that I'm not going to be kicked out of the tribe because I did something that they didn't agree with. And over and over and over again, I would make choices and show up and express and be this person that I wasn't really. And then because of that, my relationships didn't have a lot of depth. I didn't let people in. If you talk to some people who knew me even as early as 5 years ago or in previous jobs, they would probably say, oh my gosh, she's the most incredible counselor. I used to go to her all the time. I would tell her all my problems. She's a great listener. She gives incredible advice. But if you ask them, and when did she come to you to ask for advice? Or when did she come to you to tell you her deepest, darkest secrets? They'd be like, yeah, she never did that, because that was not me. To be vulnerable was dangerous. And that was an old pattern. And I'm speaking about it now from a place of having done a lot of work, and I'm not emotional about it anymore, because I've really released a lot of those patterns. And I'm now in a place in my life, thankfully, on the other side of that, which again, it's at every level, there's deeper I can go, but where I've never felt more powerful and happier and more aligned and in the flow than I do right now in my life. And I attribute so much of it to me showing up in my job, at home, in my marriage, in my friendships, authentically, and being willing to open up and share and not be perfect and to just be me. And even if no one agrees with me, expressing what I think and what I feel and not feeling like I have to come in a certain package. And the biggest surprise on the other side of that was not only did I not get rejected, but the people that weren't really into who I am anyway faded away. New amazing friendships have come in that are so fulfilling, and people who not only accept me, but encourage me to be me and call me out when they think I'm not and say, hey, wait a minute, what do you really think about that? I feel like you're holding back. And I mean, you need people like that in your life. And Rudi is a huge person. He knows me better than anyone, knows immediately when I'm holding back or falling back into old patterns. And what I want you to hear, if you're relating to any of this or you can relate to my story, is that the fears that are keeping you in a place of fitting in, it's all an illusion. And that really the suffering that you don't want to experience, you're already experiencing now. And then the only way through that suffering is through authenticity and reconnecting with yourself.
The suffering that you are fearful of experiencing, you are already experiencing now.
Yep.
Wow. Anniston came home from a business trip. She was in Las Vegas and she had to go to some functions, and she had come back and she said to me, oh my gosh, I saw so-and-so. And it was somebody that we had known in a previous job, in a previous life. So it had been at least, I want to say 13, 14 years, maybe 15 years since we'd seen this individual. And they, were in a meeting where she was. We're at a cocktail event, and he had walked up and he was like, "Oh my gosh, you look amazing!" Like what have you done? And he just couldn't. And she was like, "Oh well, maybe it's this." She's like, "No, it's not that." And she was like, "Well, maybe it's this." And so she named another thing, and he goes, "No, it's not that." And he's like, "I just can't put my finger on. I mean, you're just glowing. You're different." And I was giggling because he was experiencing her at this event in her power. When she was working with him, we were both working with him at the time. She was a very different person. She was very meek, very mild. I always said she was the best person in the world to hang out with because she was so happy. She never rocked the boat. She never had opinions on things. It was just always like, whatever you want. And she was such a joy to be around. And I was like, no, no, I want to know what she wants. And that was where I used to pull and call her forward. And now she's the most opinionated person I know in the most beautiful way. She stakes her claim. She has no problem saying I agree or I disagree with you. She can be in a boardroom meeting and just say, no, I think everyone at the table's wrong and here's why. And before that would never have happened. And the beautiful part of that is you do glow a little different. You do show up a little different. And then the genius also comes through you. The brilliance comes through you because you're allowing the authentic version of you to come out. I have two examples of living in my power and living authentically. I have a very similar story to Anniston, and I don't need to recant it. Just a little boy who didn't come from much, who didn't feel like he was worth much, and saw validation everywhere around him that everybody else was better than him. And he tried desperately to fit in. Everything he did was to try and fit in. And then at one point in time, I don't have a moment that I can share with you. I just decided I was going to stop playing someone else. I was just going to be me. And if you didn't like it, you could fly a kite. I was going to be me. And at one point in time, I got headhunted by the company that my wife was working for in an industry that my family had worked in. Anniston and I had previously worked in. She was in that moment working in. And it was for a position that would be really big, very visible, and there'd be a lot of demands, a lot of clients, a lot of expectations, a lot of eyes from the company perspective. And so everyone cautioned me and said, we're going to beg you don't take this job. Even Anniston said to me, well, I'm a little nervous about you. She never said no, but she said, I'm very nervous because everyone that's been in this job, they get fired within 1.5 to 2 years. Like no one makes it in this gig because it's so intense and the microscope is so big, or the magnifying glass is so big on this position. And the reason so many people were cautious is I can be very abrasive. I can be very direct. I can say things in a way that most people would say you should probably rephrase that slightly. And going into a corporate environment, they were right to be a little nervous. But I decided that I was going to take this job, but I would only take this job if I could do it my way. And Anniston and I sat down, and I'll never forget where we were, what we were doing. And I sat her down and I said, okay, I really want to do this. And she took a deep breath and said, okay. And I said, but I want to do it my way. And if they don't like it, they can fire me. And I don't care. But I want to do it my way. I don't want to go into this position and do it the way somebody else did or how I think someone would want me to do it. I want to do it my way. We've shared this story on the podcast previously. And so all I want to do is for anyone who has not heard the story, I just want to tell you I showed up as me. I walked in on the first day and told every single person that I believe we are love, we come from love, and that whenever we're not acting in accordance with love, we're not being our true authentic selves. I told them that we're connected to the divinity of the tapestry that is touching all time and all space we can have and we can be and we can do everything. And I will tell you, there were eye rolls from my bosses. People walked out of that meeting, the leaders thinking, what have we done? But the revenue just took off. Like we just blew up that business in the most beautiful and miraculous way because people all of a sudden connected to the person at the top with love, with kindness, with authenticity. And we created a safe space for people to do it. And I learned such an incredible lesson. But you would think that I would take that and apply that to every other area of my life, which I did not. The second example I want to give you is that today I am somewhat of a public figure in the way that I speak on stages. I go and stand in front of companies. Just 2 days ago, I was standing in front of a really large organization, and so as somebody who is in the front of the room teaching and is responsible for the growth and the development of the people, there comes a certain level of responsibility to create that impact in them in that moment and in their lives. And I have also shared that I did things like stop drinking or eating really clean or cutting out this or making sure that my sleep pattern's right. I've done all these things to make sure I'm prepared to create the greatest impact on stage. But for the longest time, I would never, ever talk about my mistakes. I would never talk about my flaws. I would never talk about my failures because there was a part of me that felt unconsciously that if I ever admitted that I was wrong or that I couldn't do something or that I wasn't good at something, that people wouldn't respect me, they wouldn't love me, they wouldn't appreciate me. And Anniston was the one that would say to me, you really need to start going there. Give them the story. Give them the truth. And when she said truth, she didn't mean I was lying, but she meant give them the whole truth. Like when you talk about that, why don't you tell them about what it felt like to be there? How did it feel when you failed? And I just wouldn't allow myself to go there. I just said, oh, but I am, but I really wasn't. And in one of those conversations, it landed very, very differently for me. And I decided in the middle of a presentation one day, standing on stage, and I was speaking at an event where there were some very, very big speakers, some of the biggest speakers in the world that I've admired. And just to have a photograph standing next to them was like, I was like fangirling next to these guys. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like I have a photo with them. I'm on stage with them. And on a time when I would never have imagined me stretching outside of my comfort zone, I just walked out on stage and I was just me in the sense that I went there. When I spoke about my failures, I told them about how badly I failed. I told them about how many times, and I told them about what it took to get there. And that when I left that event, everyone around me was like, you were by far the best speaker. I had people in that room come up to me by the hundreds saying, you touched me as if you were only speaking to me. I didn't feel like there was anyone else in the room. You spoke to my soul. That was sent in messages, DMs, emails, people that I'd spoken to in the room at the end. It was just so overwhelming. And I realized it was because it was the first time that I had stood on stage and I had taken off the armor. I had taken off the protection and I allowed the authentic me to truly come out. And I wasn't trying to be somebody who knew everything. I was just somebody that's failing forward like everybody else. And I had a vantage point to share.
There's so much we could talk about around this and being a witness to Rudi's story as well. And just seeing how, in every new level and every new experience, and as we're growing and we're thrown out of a comfort zone and into something new, whether it be a new position, a new career, motherhood, you or just any new phase of life, like I feel like there's always that adjustment period. And that's where we have to be really careful, because we can find that, oh wow, all of a sudden we revert back to old patterns and old feelings of unworthiness, or okay, I'm new here, I'm the new fish in the pond. I need to really like change who I am to fit in so that I'm accepted by this new group of people that, that they think I'm worthy of being here, or I'm accepted by my direct reports and they believe I'm worthy to be there and that they expect me to be like this. So I must be like this. And I've just learned through time and time again and through experience and a lot of trial and error that when I try to act to meet an expectation, that it never ends as well. Number one, it never serves the other individuals around me. And it doesn't serve, and it doesn't feel good, that other than, so for instance, there's been times where, maybe I made a mistake and in my job and I've owned up to it, that when the times when I've actually, was able to process it and say, wow, let me get my team together and let me talk about this with them, because I know that this is going to serve them in the end. They're going to remember this. And I'm modeling for them what leadership can look like. I'm so blessed to work for leaders, like for my superiors, who are incredibly authentic. They show up as themselves, and in big, big board meetings with lots of money at stake will speak their truth versus speaking what they think is going to get them the deal. And it has made it okay for me to do the same. And now I get to turn around and make it okay for other people to do the same. And that's what's so important, I think, of this lesson and what we're talking about here, that you showing up authentically is so much more than just about you. And that I believe we're all so connected. And that when you do show up and you share, as Rudi said, you share not just the breakthroughs, but also the breakdowns, that it's actually oftentimes those breakdowns when sharing that become somebody else's breakthroughs. And thus you're continually giving purpose and meaning to your pain and to the times that were hard. And authenticity doesn't just mean being vulnerable about, all the things in your life. It also means being willing to share what you're interested in, being willing to express your creativity in the way that you feel inspired to express. Even today, I was talking to Rudi, I have many, many passions. I'm a multi-passionate person. I am not a cookie cutter executive or business owner by any way, shape, or form. I don't know anyone else like me. And one of my passions is numerology. And I've done a couple episodes on it, and I'm sure I'll do some more on this podcast. But it's never far from my mind. I look at numbers. I'm constantly looking for purpose and meaning in numbers. And I had said to him, we're planning an upcoming conference for my team, and we're going to bring in Rudi, and Rudi and I are going to do some back and forth training. And I thought, oh, it'd be really cool if I did this one training, but would that be kind of weird? Is this inappropriate for me to bring this training in? And I even caught myself saying it. And Rudi was like, Anniston, if you feel inspired to do that training, you need to listen to that. That's coming through you. That's coming through you authentically. You're excited about it. You're joyful about it. There's something there. And even then, it's like stopped me in my tracks, and I realized, oh my gosh, I was just reverting back into, oh, but that might be too much. Which means I might be too much. I might being a little too extra for other people and might make them uncomfortable. And that's very old Anniston. And we don't do that anymore. And that's what I have to remind myself. We don't do that anymore. So the goal of this podcast and this episode is really just to shine a light and hopefully give you an opportunity to ask yourself this question. Right now in your life, are you belonging? Do you belong? Are you showing up authentically with your friends, your family, at work? Or are you more focused on fitting in? And even just asking yourself that question and really sitting with it and contemplating it can bring about a lot of transformation and breakthrough. Just that awareness alone, and being able to say, wow, here in this area of my life, I feel pretty good, but man, this area, I show up so differently. They don't really know who I am. How can I fix that? What could I do differently to show up more authentically? Or what am I really most afraid of? And even just asking yourself those questions is a really good first step in starting to do the work to change it.
One of my greatest teachers on this topic, as we are always in a perpetual state of learning, is my daughter. And Annis and I have the privilege of getting to watch this girl grow. She only ever does what she wants to do. There is nothing you can put in front of her that she's going to do if she's not into it. She'll have friends come over, and then we'll look out of the window and check on them to make sure they're okay. And they're all playing together. And then she's on the side doing something else all by herself. And then I'll go to her and I'll say, "What are you doing?" And she goes, "Oh, they're playing a game. I don't feel like playing that game right now. So I just want to do this." And she doesn't feel the need to fit into the group. If we come to her and we say, "Hey, we're going to, swim in the pool and turn on the hot tub and jump between them. Do you want to come and play with us? We're going to play Marco Polo." She'll take a moment and go, nah. And not even say, "No, I don't feel like it because of it." It's just no.
It's just no, period, stop. Like no is a complete sentence. That should be her bumper sticker.
And that's just, to me, the most beautiful thing, because she truly is her most authentic self. I remember being my most vulnerable, broken self was when I was in high school, and I had transferred my last 2.5 years to a different school. And everybody in that school just seemed to be really good looking. They were all very wealthy. It was a private school. And I just felt like I so stuck out. And there was this one guy, and his name is Kevin. And Kevin was an incredibly good looking guy. He was so athletic, came from a great family. He dressed really well, but he was super quiet. And he was by far the most popular person in school. Friends of mine that were girls would say, "Oh, he was very much the sexiest guy in school." Like every girl crushed on Kevin. And I would look at Kevin and I wouldn't understand. Yes, he was good looking. Yes, he was well dressed, but Kevin was very quiet. Kevin didn't talk a lot. Kevin wouldn't be the guy in the middle of the party making the biggest noise. He wouldn't be in the classroom telling the jokes. He would just be sitting and listening and nodding his head. And sometimes he'd have a smile or a smirk. And Kevin always seemed to know who he was. And I admired so much that he didn't feel the need to be anything. He wouldn't go somewhere if he didn't want to. He wouldn't do something if he didn't want to do. The fad at the time was everybody was surfing, and he was like, "Yeah, I just don't feel like surfing." And he bought a bicycle and started cycling. He became one of the best cyclists in the world, truly one of the greatest cyclists. And that became his passion, because he focused on what did he want, not what everybody else wanted. And I was still in that stage observing him, but doing everything everybody else was doing because I so desperately wanted to fit in. And I think about him a lot. And when I'm in situations when I'm about to make a decision as to, is that something that I want to do, or what is it I want to do, I always reflect on, how would Kevin have reacted to this situation? And I haven't spoken to that man in 20 something years, but I think about the way he was at 16 years old, 17 years old, never following the footsteps of others. If people were smoking cigarettes and he didn't smoke, he was like, "No, I don't smoke." And yet when they asked me, "Do you smoke?" and I said no, and they laughed at me, I immediately started smoking. I was never a smoker, but I had to. But Kevin didn't have to. He didn't feel the need. And so I want to leave you pondering, who are you and how do you show up in life? And are you still acting from a place of wanting to fit in every moment, in every situation? Are you wanting to fit in with yourself, or are you trying to fit in with a group of people? And if you could you belong by just being you? Anniston loves to use this line on me. And it's not the same content, the line, but it's fit into different situations or circumstances. The context is going to be the same. And that is, by not showing up you, what are people going to not gain from being in your presence? And I use that when I'm coaching. I use that when I'm speaking on stage, or if I'm in the process of writing a book, or whatever it is that I'm going to be doing. Is, if I don't show up as me, who am I robbing the opportunity to gain from the experience if I were me? And who are you robbing as you hear these words? The experience of you.
There will never be another you. You are a unique expression of God, creator, source, whatever you want to call the being of all that is. And there will quite literally never be another you. And you came here to be something, to do something, to express in a very unique way, and ultimately to serve in a unique way. There is something very specific. And you being authentic is 100% tied to you achieving that greater purpose for your life and feeling fulfilled. And by not being you, you can't be somebody else. You could spend a lifetime trying to be and trying to emulate, because you think the authentic you isn't good enough, or you were made to believe, or your little 7-year-old self believed, because there wasn't someone standing right next to you saying, hey, guess what? I know you're processing this way, but you're actually perfect just the way that you are. Never stop being you. And this quality is really, really important. Or this gift that you have is really, really important. Or the way that you say this or do this or think is so unique and vital for this world. Can you imagine if we had that person on our shoulder from when we were little kids, just reminding us and encouraging us, and we listen to it? Well, we're urging you to start listening to it and to start really reconnecting with who are you when you are your most authentic, and to start valuing that and seeing the beauty in that person, because the world needs what you have to give.
And with that, we love you. We want you to have the most amazing day. And thank you so much for joining us on the InPowered Life podcast. Till next time. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you don't miss out on future content. And we would love your support in leaving us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Make sure to check the show notes for more information on how you can find us online and on Instagram. Now go create an amazing day for yourself, and we'll see you again soon.